I came to the wedding, but my daughter met me with the words, "You don't belong here. Get out." I looked her straight in the eyes and replied, "Without my money, you wouldn't even have that ring." And then the guests saw what she feared most. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now let's get started. I arrived at the Austin Riverside loft in a light blue dress that had taken me weeks to choose. Not too pale to wash me out, not too bold to upstage the bride. I had gone back and forth between shades, holding each fabric against my skin in the mirror, thinking of Chloe's face when she saw me. I wanted to look appropriate, respectful, presentable, like a mother who had her place in her daughter's story. In my hands I carried a bouquet. White hydrangeas, pale roses, silver eucalyptus, the same colors I'd seen on their invitation cards, embossed with metallic ink and a hashtag stamped across the bottom. Hashtag Chloe and Tyler forever. I thought matching their palette would make me blend in, show my respect, my quiet attempt at harmony. My heart was pounding as I stepped onto the staircase that wound upward into the loft. The building smelled faintly of cedar and champagne, the kind of place magazines would call industrial chic. My shoes tapped the steps in a rhythm that reminded me of nursing night shifts years ago, when I tiptoed to avoid waking patients. Even then, my body carried the habit of moving carefully through spaces I didn't want to disturb. Halfway up I saw her. Chloe, my daughter, my only child. Her face was framed by soft curls, the glow of youth and attention on her. 26, though in my mind she was still that little girl clutching my hand at a school recital. She was surrounded by her bridesmaids in their identical satin gowns, Tyler at her side looking like a boy dressed up in a man's suit. She looked directly at me. Our eyes locked, and then she spoke. "You don't belong here. Leave." The words landed like steel against bone. For a second I thought I misheard. Surely she hadn't said that. Not here, not in front of all these people. But the smirks on her bridesmaids' faces confirmed it. The sudden hush of the crowd confirmed it. The faint sound of a phone camera clicking confirmed it. The DJ's music faltered, cutting off in the middle of a beat. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Is that her mom?" I froze on the step. My hand tightened around the bouquet until the stems bent and one rose snapped against my palm. I looked at her left hand, at the diamond catching the light. Sparkling, proud, a symbol of forever. Half that diamond had been bought with my money. Half of that sparkle was mine. And with my voice steady, steadier than I felt, steadier than the decades of compromises and sacrifices trembling inside me, I answered, "Without my money, you wouldn't even have that ring." A silence stretched so long it felt like a rope tightening around my throat. Tyler stepped half a pace back, as if I were radioactive. The host, some hired friend of their family, with a perfectly ironed suit and rehearsed smile, avoided looking at me, fumbling with his note cards as if this disruption hadn't occurred. Inside the loft, I could see the farmhouse table laid out like a magazine spread. Rows of champagne flutes lined up with precision. Napkins folded into swans. Candles flickering in glass cylinders. And I knew, with a stab of recognition, how many of those items bore the fingerprints of my bank account. The loft's vaulted windows spilled golden light across the polished floorboards. Guests were already in their seats, murmuring, twisting to watch the spectacle at the stairs. Phones rose higher. Red dots blinked. Somewhere, someone was live-streaming my public execution as a mother. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My cheeks burned, not from shame but from something deeper, older. The hot ache of betrayal I had felt before, but never this raw, never this naked. Because I hadn't come to fight. I hadn't come to demand recognition or reclaim debts. I had come to celebrate, to close one chapter of my life with grace, to stand at the edge of her new beginning and whisper goodbye to the years when I was needed. I had imagined a hug, a smile, maybe even a soft, "Thank you, Mom. I couldn't have done this without you." Instead, I was told I didn't belong. I glanced down at my dress, smoothed my hand over the fabric. I thought of the careful hours I spent pressing it, the small earrings I'd chosen, pearls my late husband had given me on our 20th anniversary, the last anniversary before cancer stole him. I had wanted him to be here today. I had wanted Chloe to remember that she came from something, from us. But here I was, alone on the stairs, branded unwanted by the very child whose emergencies had been soothed by my hands, whose disasters had been covered by my savings, whose dreams had been carried on my back. The bouquet trembled in my grip. Her bridesmaids stood like guards around her, satin armor gleaming, their smiles sharp. One of them whispered something in her ear and Chloe laughed, a brittle laugh too loud, meant for the audience. I caught sight of Tyler's mother, Paula, in her cream suit, her jewelry catching the light. She looked at me with thinly veiled satisfaction, the kind of look that said, "See? She's not part of this family. We are." And suddenly I understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't nerves. This was planned. I had been cast as the villain in their perfect performance, the shadow they could collectively banish to make their fairy tale shine brighter. My stomach churned, but I straightened my shoulders. If they wanted humiliation to be public, then so would be the truth. I stepped up one more stair, my voice cutting through the loft like glass breaking. "You want me to leave? Then these people deserve to know exactly what they're drinking from those glasses. Who paid for those flowers? What card covered the balance of this loft?" A ripple of unease passed through the guests. Phones tilted. Some recorded closer. Some lowered their eyes in discomfort. But no one stopped me. No one said, "She's the mother, let her stay." I had never felt so invisible and yet so exposed. And in that moment I realized something devastating. Invisibility is not the absence of sight. It is the refusal of acknowledgement. And my own daughter, the child I had raised through sleepless nights, through scraped knees and broken hearts, was refusing me now. The bouquet slipped slightly in my grip. A petal fell, fluttering to the ground like something discarded. Like me, I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run. But I stood there because leaving quietly would have been another sacrifice. And I had no more left to give. Not tonight. Not ever again. The year before that day, the year before Chloe looked me in the eye and told me I didn't belong, was a slow, grinding test of how much one mother's heart could be whittled away before it cracked. It began innocently, as it always does. "Mom, we're short this month. Could you help just until Tyler gets his bonus?" That first transfer was $900. 6 months of rent, each temporary, each with the same promise. "We'll pay you back once things settle." But things never settled. They only multiplied. When Tyler's car broke down, I wired them $800. When Chloe wanted a more reliable vehicle before wedding season, I added another $1,000 for the down payment. Then came the venue deposit, $1,200. A non-refundable deadline, she said breathlessly over the phone, as if the loft itself would vanish from the earth if I didn't enter my card number within the hour. "I'll pay you back after the wedding," Chloe promised. Her voice was honey then, smooth and coaxing. A daughter's voice, but practiced, sharpened into persuasion. I should have known better. After all, I was 68, not naive. I had spent decades as a nurse watching people barter with their pain, their excuses, their last chances. But with Chloe I still believed. I still wanted to believe that helping her wasn't enabling, that generosity wasn't being exploited. It was around the $350 for her makeup artist that I began noticing the tone of her text shift. "Venmo'd you." "Thanks. No thank you. No call." Just clipped mechanical transactions like I was her ATM with occasional emojis. The last time she added a heart was 3 months before the engagement party. After that, even the pretense of affection drained away. And then the snide reminders began. "You know, real parents pay for weddings." The first time she said it, I laughed weakly, thinking she was joking. The second time, she added it with a sharp smile while her friends giggled beside her. The third time, she texted it after I hesitated about sending $600 for flowers. By then, my checking account was bleeding. I began to trim corners in my own life. I canceled my art classes in San Antonio, telling myself I'd re-enroll once things calmed down. I stopped buying the good coffee I liked. I let the house repairs wait. My own shoes thinned at the soles while Chloe tried on gowns worth more than my monthly retirement check. Her dream dress, the one she insisted she couldn't live without, was beyond her budget. So I added $700 just for now. Another line in a spreadsheet I kept on a yellow pad hidden in my dresser drawer. At night I would trace the figures with a pen, adding, subtracting, whispering numbers like prayers. 900, 1800, 1200, 350, 600, 700. The ledger of motherhood reduced to arithmetic. I told no one. Not my sister. Not my church friends. I was ashamed, though I couldn't yet admit why. The slights began to stack like cards in a house destined to collapse. At her bachelorette weekend, I was forgotten on the guest list. When I asked, Chloe said with a shrug, "It's really just for my girls, Mom. You wouldn't fit in." At the dress fitting, I drove an hour to Austin only to be left in the hallway while they laughed inside. I sat on a bench staring at my hands waiting for her to call me in. She never did. When she emerged, glowing veil in hand, she looked surprised to see me still sitting there. "Oh, you waited?" At the rehearsal dinner, the address came by text an hour before. Across town. During rush hour. By the time I arrived, dessert plates were being cleared. Tyler's groomsman leaned over and said with mock surprise, "Oh, Mrs. Reed, you actually made it." The digs never changed. Only the amounts on my bank statements did. One night, unable to sleep, I opened my banking app and scrolled through the transfers. My thumb hovered over each line. $900 rent. $1,800 car payments. $1,200 loft deposit. $350 makeup. $600 flowers. $700 dress. On and on. Each transaction a piece of myself siphoned away. $9,785 in 1 year. I whispered the number out loud, the sound harsh in the quiet of my kitchen. My reflection in the window stared back at me. Tired, lined, still carrying the softness of a woman who wanted to be wanted. But in their world I wasn't a mother. I was a sponsor. And the cruelest cuts were never the dollar signs. They were the silences. The empty chairs. The withheld invitations. The way Chloe's eyes skimmed past me like I was already a ghost. That year I learned something people don't say about betrayal. It doesn't arrive with a scream. It arrives with receipts. At the door, the coordinator stopped me with a polished smile and a tablet in her hands. She looked like she belonged in an Apple commercial. Headset tucked behind one ear. Perfectly manicured nails tapping across the glowing screen. "Name, please?" she asked without looking up. "Nora Reed. Mother of the bride." She scrolled. Tapped. Tilted her head. Scrolled again. Then she shrugged. "You're not listed." The words were delivered so casually, like telling someone their order wasn't ready yet, as if it were nothing to inform a mother that her name had been erased from her daughter's own wedding. I waited, expecting her to catch her mistake, to say, "Oh, sorry, you're under parent of the bride." But she didn't. Her stylus hovered, ready to move on to the next guest. "I'm her mother," I repeated. My voice cracked. Still she only shrugged, her glossy smile tightening. "Not on the list." And right there beside me stood Paula, Tyler's mother, glowing like a queen in her cream suit, pearls catching the afternoon light. Her hair was set in perfect waves, her perfume a wall of powdery sweetness that filled the entryway. "Paula Hale, family of the groom," she said smoothly. The coordinator lit up. "Oh yes, of course. Right this way, Mrs. Hale. You're on our special guests list." The phrase stabbed. Special guests. I craned my neck and saw the chart displayed by the entry table. Rows of calligraph cards set under a glass dome. Parents, siblings, groomsmen, sisters of the heart. Even an old college professor whose photo I recognized from Chloe's Facebook. Their names glimmered in ink. Mine was absent. I stood there in the doorway, clinging to an envelope in my purse. Inside was a check, $2,000 carefully written, meant to be their wedding start. My last gift. It had felt generous when I signed it, though next to their hashtag Chloe and Tyler forever, it looked laughably small. Paula's laugh tinkled beside me. "Isn't it wonderful?" she cooed to the coordinator. "How smoothly everything has gone? Our family really pulled this together beautifully." Her family. Not ours. Not mine. Guests streamed past me, brushing my shoulder, eyes darting toward the standoff at the door. A young man whispered to his date, "Is that the mom?" His date smirked. Another woman raised her phone, angling it just so, pretending to text while recording the tension. I thought of all the moments that had led here, wiring rent money at midnight, driving across town for rehearsals I was told about at the last second, waiting in hallways outside dress fittings. I had endured every small erasure, every clipped word, every silent punishment. I had swallowed it all, telling myself, the wedding will make it worth it. That day at least she will need me. She will see me. And now here was the truth, raw and unvarnished. I was not even on the list. Chloe appeared again near the staircase, her gown shimmering under the chandeliers. She saw me frozen in the doorway, saw the coordinator holding her tablet like a shield, saw Paula's satisfied smirk. And she said it again, loud enough to slice through the chatter. You don't belong here. Leave. The crowd chuckled, pitying, entertained. This was the part where I was supposed to shrink. This was the script they'd written for me. The aging mother clinging to relevance, too desperate to know when her role was over. But I didn't move. Instead, I placed the envelope on the gift table, sliding it onto the pile of glossy wrapped boxes and satin backs. My hand lingered on it, firm, as if pinning it there with truth. If the bride accepts gifts, I said clearly, then she will accept the truth of how they appeared. The coordinator's tablet slipped in her grip. A ripple passed through the guests, a wave of whispers rising like wine through dry grass. Phones raised higher. I looked directly at Chloe. My voice shook but carried. You want me gone? Then you tell them. Tell them who paid the deposit for this loft. Who signed the checks when you fell short. Tell them who emptied her retirement savings so you could play it forever under these lights. Chloe's cheeks flushed. She glanced at Tyler. He avoided her eyes, adjusting his tie, shifting back again as though retreating from her. Paula hissed under her breath. Don't cause a scene. But the scene had already arrived. I smoothed the skirt of my blue dress with one trembling hand and let the other rest firmly over that envelope. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt steady. Because humiliation was already public. And now so would be the truth. The room was already buzzing with unease when I lifted my hand. My gesture was slow, deliberate, as though I were a conductor readying an orchestra. May I have a moment for the bride's mother? The MC hesitated. He was a tall man in a dark suit, holding the mic as if it were a torch he couldn't risk passing to the wrong hands. His eyes darted toward Chloe, then to Paula, then back to me. The guests leaned in, hungry. Nothing feeds a crowd like conflict, and they wanted it plated with champagne. For one breathless second I thought he would refuse. Then, as if swayed by the gravity of the room, he held out the microphone. I took it. The metal was cool in my hand, heavy. My voice echoed, softer at first but expanding as I steadied myself. My name is Nora Reed. I am the mother of the bride. The crowd shifted. Some glanced at each other with embarrassment. Others kept recording. A few turned away, sipping champagne, pretending not to watch though their ears strained for every syllable. I looked at Chloe, my daughter, her knuckles white around the bouquet she clutched, her mouth frozen in a practiced smile that no longer held. I paid the deposit for this loft, I continued. Part of these flowers. The makeup. And yes, that ring on my daughter's finger. Gasps fluttered through the air like startled birds. A bridesmaid snickered into her hand. The bartender froze mid-pour. I could feel the tension like static against my skin. For the past year, I said, my voice hardening, I've been cleaning up emergencies, covering shortfalls, wiring rent money, buying time. And each time I was told I didn't understand how things worked now. That I was old-fashioned. I let the word old-fashioned linger. Several young guests smirked knowingly, the kind of smile that carries both superiority and ignorance. Well, I said, old-fashioned mothers expect gratitude. Old-fashioned mothers believe loyalty runs deeper than hashtags. Chloe's face contorted. Stop it, she hissed. Her voice carrying just enough to be picked up by someone's phone mic. Tyler stepped forward, jaw tight. Don't cause a scene, he warned, the words sharp, meant to corral me back into silence. But silence had already been murdered on those stairs. I raised the envelope. Its cream paper gleamed under the chandeliers. This, I said, was your honeymoon starter fund. $2,000. Money from my savings. Money I thought would help you begin a life together. Chloe's eyes widened. Tyler reached for my arm. Paula whispered something frantic to the coordinator. I held the envelope high, then with one decisive movement, tore the check in half. The sound, that small rip of paper, seemed louder than the music, louder than any applause. This is no longer a honeymoon fund, I declared. This is the truth fund. I slipped the torn halves into my purse. My hands were steady. For the first time in a long while, my hands were steady. A heavy silence fell over the loft. I could hear the faint hiss of candles, the shuffling of feet, the nervous clearing of a throat. Some guests averted their eyes. Others stared with the intensity of people watching a car crash. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to punctuate my words, the double doors at the back of the loft burst open. In walked a young woman in a dusty pink dress, her heels clicking against the hardwood. Head swiveled. Cameras rose again. Kayla, Chloe's former roommate. She moved with the determined stride of someone who had waited too long for her turn. Her voice cut clear across the room. Chloe, you blocked me, but since everyone's here, return my card. You used it for the restaurant deposit and left me maxed out. The room erupted. Guests gasped, some whispering, some laughing nervously. Paula went pale. Chloe's hand shook around her bouquet. Tyler turned to her, his whisper sharp. What is she talking about? And on the projector in the corner, a slideshow of Chloe's childhood photos played. Her toddler smile, her birthday parties, her first day of school. Images meant to tell a story of innocence and love, now clashing grotesquely with the accusations hanging in the air. At that same moment, my phone vibrated. I glanced down my banking app, glowing with line after line of transfers, evidence written in numbers. Kayla handed me a printout, hotel reservations in Waco, charged to her card on the very night of the so-called bachelorette. Her hand trembled, but her voice was clear. You never paid me back. The murmurs grew into a low roar. Guests craned their necks, whispering Chloe's name like it was already a headline. What Chloe feared most was happening. Undeniable proof. In public. Proof that she took and never returned. I lifted the microphone again, my voice calm, deliberate. You see, my daughter has been borrowing not just from me, but from anyone within reach. And when repayment time comes, silence. Excuses. Disappearing acts. Chloe's lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes darted desperately, searching for rescue. Tyler's hand slipped from hers entirely. The perfect day was cracking. The fairy tale facade was collapsing under the weight of numbers, receipts, and voices too loud to ignore. I looked out across the sea of faces, relatives, old friends, strangers, all watching, all recording, all bearing witness. And I thought, if humiliation is public, then let the truth be public too. Kayla's arrival was not part of anyone's script, least of all Chloe's. She stood there in her dusty pink dress, not glamorous like the bridesmaids, not polished like Paula in her cream suit, but real. Her cheeks flushed, her chest rising with each breath, her voice carrying through the loft like a verdict. Chloe, you blocked me, but since everyone's here, return my card. You used it for a restaurant deposit and left me maxed out. The words hit like stones thrown into still water. Ripples spread instantly. Guests turned to each other, muttering. The bridesmaids stiffened, their painted smiles cracking. A groomsman whispered, "What the hell?" as he pulled out his phone. Chloe's face drained of color. She gripped her bouquet so hard petals snapped, white fragments falling to the polished wood floor. You don't know what you're talking about, Chloe snapped, her voice brittle. This isn't the time or place. Kayla stepped closer, pulling folded papers from her clutch. Her hands shook, but her determination was unflinching. It's exactly the time. You used my credit card for a $750 restaurant deposit. You promised you'd pay me back. Instead, you ghosted me. I had to cancel my trip home because of you. Paula gasped audibly, hand covering her mouth. Tyler leaned toward Chloe, whispering, "Is this true?" Chloe shook her head too quickly. The denial rehearsed but hollow. She's exaggerating. She's just bitter I didn't invite her. Kayla cut her off, shoving the papers toward me. Here. Proof. Bank statements. Charges from the night of her so-called bachelorette. Waco hotel rooms. Spa packages. All on my card. I took the papers. My fingers trembled, but not from fear. From recognition. Line after line mirrored the ones I had memorized on my own bank statements. Transfers, deposits, charges. The same pattern repeated across every relationship Chloe touched. Take, spend, disappear. At that same moment, the projector on the far wall slid to another image. A smiling Chloe at 7 years old, icing smeared on her cheeks, holding a birthday cake I had stayed up all night to make. The contrast burned. The murmurs grew louder, angrier. She maxed out her roommate's card? One guest whispered. On her bachelorette? Another muttered. Unbelievable. Who does that? Tyler stepped back as though the ground beneath him were shifting. He whispered again, this time harsher. Chloe, tell me this isn't true. Her hands shook. The bouquet slipped from her grip, thudding against the floor. She bent to pick it up but froze halfway, realizing all eyes were on her, recording. If she stooped now, the camera lenses would catch her not as a bride but as a child picking up broken pieces. She straightened, her voice cracking. It's nothing. It's not what it looks like. But it was. Because Kayla wasn't finished. She turned toward me, her voice steadying. Mrs. Reed, I know she's your daughter, but she's done this to me too many times. Promises, excuses, then silence. She used me like a bank. And when I asked for my money back, she blocked me. She doesn't pay anyone back. The room erupted. Some laughed bitterly, others gasped, a few muttered. Sounds familiar. My phone buzzed again. I glanced down. My banking app displayed rows of transfers to Chloe's account, each one like a scar carved into my retirement. I turned the screen outward, showing Kayla, showing Tyler, showing the nearest guests. Numbers don't lie. Chloe's hands shook so violently now that the bouquet slid again from her grip, scattering roses across the floor. She didn't bend this time. She stood frozen, her eyes darting, frantic, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. And in that moment I saw it, the thing she feared most. Exposure. Not whispers in hallways, not my quiet sighs on late-night phone calls, not the private shame of taking and never repaying. No, what she feared most was the truth bursting into the light, undeniable, public, irreversible. Paula reached for Chloe's arm, her voice trembling. Sweetheart, tell them it's not true. Say something. But Chloe's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on land. Nothing came. The slideshow behind her rolled on, oblivious. Chloe at prom. Chloe in her cap and gown. Chloe in every picture smiling wide. Her future bright, her past spotless. A carefully curated mythology, now colliding with the reality standing in front of 200 witnesses. I raised the microphone again. My voice was calm, measured. My daughter has been borrowing, not just from me, but from anyone who would listen to her pleas. And when repayment time comes, she vanishes. She spins excuses. She leaves wreckage behind her. Gasps again. Someone muttered, I knew it. Another said, my cousin warned me about her. Tyler ran his hand down his face, pale. His shoulders sagged under the weight of this truth. For the first time his boyish charm cracked, revealing fear. Fear of the bride beside him. Fear of the family he was about to tie himself to. Chloe, he whispered. Tell me it's a lie. Her silence was the answer. Phones hovered like vultures. Every angle captured, every whisper amplified. And Chloe, my daughter, my blood, stood cornered by her own choices, by her own trail of debts and betrayals, by the truth she thought she could bury under flowers and hashtags. I watched her chest rise and fall too fast, her mascara trembling at the edge of her lashes. She looked at me as if I were the executioner. But I wasn't. I was only the mirror. This was what she feared most. And it was only the beginning. Stop it. Chloe's voice cracked through the loft, shrill and trembling. Her bouquet lay abandoned on the floor, its roses crushed beneath the heel of one of her bridesmaids. Her mascara had beg asterisk end to smear, black shadows staining the corners of her eyes. You always bought love, Mom, she screamed, pointing at me with a shaking hand. You threw money at me my whole life and now you want to use it to control me. The words landed like knives, sharper because they were half true. I had bought peace. I had bought her silence. I had bought myself the illusion of being needed. I lowered the mic, my voice quieter now, but no less firm. No, I didn't buy your love. I bought my own silence. I bought the illusion that you were a daughter who still needed me. The crowd hushed. That sentence cut deeper than any shout. I unclasped the silver bracelet around my wrist, the one Chloe had once admired but never thanked me for lending her. I held it out to the coordinator, who still clutched her tablet awkwardly. Take me off the list, I told her. I'm no guest here. The coordinator hesitated, stunned, but took it. The metal clinked against her clipboard like punctuation. At that moment, the venue manager appeared from the side door. He was a stocky man in a black vest, his expression tight with nerves. He approached Tyler, glancing quickly at me, then back at the groom. "Sir," the manager said softly, but his words carried. "The remaining balance of $2,400 has not cleared. We'll need payment before service continues." A ripple of unease passed through the guests. Paula gasped, clutching her pearl necklace. "That must be a mistake," she stammered. "Everything's taken care of. Isn't it, Tyler?" Tyler's face drained of color. He turned to Chloe. "Did you pay it?" Chloe shook her head rapidly. "I thought you did." The manager's voice sharpened. "It hasn't been paid. We'll need immediate settlement." The DJ shifted uncomfortably. The bartender glanced toward the manager, waiting. The illusion of seamless perfection was slipping fast, and the staff knew it. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded sheet, my handwritten spreadsheet, creased and worn from too many nights of adding numbers by lamplight. I stepped forward, the paper trembling only slightly in my hand. "Debt of the Reed family to the Hale family," I read aloud. $9,785 in 1 year. Repayments 0. Gasps again. The bridesmaids' painted smiles collapsed. Guests exchanged looks, whispers sharp as knives. I handed the paper to the manager. His eyes flicked down, scanning the figures. When he looked up, his face was hard. He gave a short nod, then turned toward the bartender. A murmur passed like a signal through the staff. One by one, the bottles vanished from the counter. Champagne flutes were quietly lifted and carried back to the kitchen. Servers paused mid-step, trays of hors d'oeuvres turning around before reaching the guests. The music tried to swell again, the DJ fumbling with his equipment, but the beats sounded hollow. No rhythm could mask the sound of a fantasy unraveling. "Mom!" Chloe's voice cracked, high and frantic. "Why are you doing this? Why are you ruining everything?" I met her eyes. For the first time in months, maybe years, I looked at her without flinching. "I'm not ruining anything, Chloe. I'm just refusing to keep paying the bill for a love that doesn't exist." Her lips trembled. "You're jealous. That's what this is. You can't stand that I'm building a life without you." I laughed softly, bitterly. "A life without me? Chloe, you're standing in a loft I paid for, wearing a ring I helped finance, holding flowers I covered. If this is life without me, I wonder what life with me looked like to you." The crowd erupted again, whispers, mutters, even a few muffled laughs. Chloe's face crumpled, her composure gone. The venue manager cleared his throat again. "Until the balance is settled, we cannot continue service." His voice was firm, final. The staff froze, waiting. And then the strangest thing happened, silence. Not respectful silence, not awkward silence, but the kind that follows a car crash. The kind where everyone stares, not knowing whether to look away or lean closer. I looked around the room. The projector still scrolled Chloe's childhood, birthday candles, scraped knees, graduation gowns. But those images no longer held power. They flickered like ghosts against the wall, irrelevant against the reality unfolding here. The wedding hadn't ended with a kiss or a toast. It ended with math. Not with lights dimming, not with the DJ's announcement, but with the collapse of an illusion under the weight of unpaid bills. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't expected, relief. Tyler's face was as pale as the table linens. His hand shook slightly as he grabbed a champagne flute from a nearby tray. Though the glass was empty, the servers had already swept the bottles away. He lifted it anyway, desperate to reclaim control of the room. "Let's..." His voice cracked, then steadied with an effort. "Let's toast to love." The words hung in the air like damp laundry, limp and heavy. Not one guest raised a glass. Not one hand lifted. The silence was brutal, the kind that feeds on itself, growing heavier with every passing second. Paula leaned across the aisle toward me, her pearls swaying, her voice low but sharp. "How much to leave quietly?" I turned to her slowly, measuring every syllable. "Nothing," I said. "My presence isn't for sale." Her eyes widened, scandalized, as though she'd never encountered a refusal in her life. I moved toward the gift table, sliding my purse onto the polished wood. I set down a smaller envelope, this one sealed not with money but with cold certainty. Chloe's eyes widened. She recognized it instantly. Her lips parted in panic. I tapped the envelope with one finger. Inside is a flash drive. Messages between my daughter and her maid of honor. Conversations where she mapped out exactly how to squeeze me for the maximum amount of cash while cutting me out of the celebration. Gasps again. A ripple of murmurs. Phones tilted toward me, capturing every word. Chloe's face flushed scarlet. "You're lying," she spat. "Those aren't even real." "They're real," I cut in, my voice sharp. Every word. Every emoji. Every cold plan written like I was a slot machine instead of a mother. Shall I read them now? Or should we project them on the wall beside your baby pictures? The crowd shifted. Even the bridesmaids' smirks faltered, their painted armor cracking under the weight of exposed conspiracy. Tyler turned slowly toward Chloe. "What is she talking about?" His voice was low, dangerous. Chloe shook her head, eyes darting. "It's nothing, just jokes." "Jokes," I said, lifting the mic again. "Is that what you call? Let's keep her paying, but don't give her a seat at the head table. She'll swallow it if we guilt her enough. Or Mom thinks she's invited, lol. Wait till she sees the list." Chloe's mouth opened but no sound came. Her bouquet lay forgotten on the floor, petals scattered like ashes. I placed the mic back into the MC's hand, his knuckles white as he clutched it, unsure whether to thank me or flee. "Show's over," I said simply. My voice carried more than any microphone could. I turned toward the doors, my heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that echoed through the stunned silence. But as I reached the threshold, a bridesmaid shouted after me, her voice shrill with adrenaline. "Nobody here even loves you." For a split second, the words sliced. Old instincts screamed at me to shrink, to retreat. But before I could answer, a voice rose from the back, strong, sharp, cutting through the room like lightning. "So what?" Truth, still truth. Heads turned. It was one of the bartenders, his apron still tied, his expression steady. He set down his tray and folded his arms, eyes burning into Chloe. The room shifted again. Guests murmured louder, some nodding, some whispering, some laughing bitterly. The tide had turned. I didn't need to say another word. I pushed the doors open and stepped out into the warm Texas night. The cicadas buzzed in the trees, their rhythm steady, indifferent to the chaos unraveling inside. The humid air wrapped around me like a blanket. For the first time in a year, maybe longer, I breathed freely. Behind me, the music faltered again, stuttering back into motion as though the DJ believed he could patch over reality with bass and treble. But it no longer mattered. The illusion was dead. I walked down the steps, my light blue dress brushing against the railing, my purse heavy with torn checks and receipts. My shoes clicked against the concrete, each step lighter than the last. I did not look back. The morning after, I woke with the taste of ash in my mouth. Not from drink. I hadn't touched a drop of champagne, but from truth. Truth leaves its own hangover. Sunlight poured through the blinds, sharp and unforgiving. My house felt different, heavier, as if the walls themselves had absorbed what had happened the night before. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd written checks, signed transfers, budgeted away my retirement. It was littered with receipts I'd pulled from my purse the night before, paper torn and creased from years of shame. They lay in messy piles now, not neatly hidden in a drawer. I wanted to see them. I wanted the ugliness in daylight. I picked up the phone and called Mr. Carter, the attorney I had used once years ago when revising my will. His voice was calm, measured, the tone of a man who had seen countless families turn on themselves. "I need to formalize some debts," I told him. "Every transfer, every rent payment, every emergency I covered. I want it documented. Legal." He was silent for a beat, then asked quietly, "Is this about Chloe?" "Yes." His sigh carried down the line. "Then let's start immediately." By noon I had changed the locks. The locksmith worked efficiently, sliding metal and bolts into place. The clink of new tumblers felt like music. I watched him twist the key, test the door, and for the first time in months I didn't fear who might walk in unannounced. That afternoon, I sat with my laptop and canceled Chloe's access to every account where she was listed as co-signer. Bank, utilities, streaming services, little veins of entitlement I had let her attach to my life, one by one, now cauterized. My phone began to buzz almost immediately. Calls, texts, voicemails stacking like an avalanche. You ruined my wedding. You're toxic. You're jealous. You owe me for everything you denied me growing up. I didn't answer. I set my voicemail to auto-reject. Each ring cut short by silence. Online, Chloe was faster. By the afternoon, her Instagram lit up with posts. Glossy photos of her in the loft, captions about toxic parents who can't stand to see their children happy. She painted herself as a victim of my bitterness, my supposed jealousy. But the comments told another story. The florist chimed in first. Didn't pay her balance. Blocked me after I asked. Then the bartender. Funny how your mom ruined it when you still owe me $400 from last week. Kayla added her own, tagging me directly. I stand with you, Mrs. Reed. I still haven't seen a dime. The facade cracked further. Hashtags turned mocking. Strangers dissected the drama as if it were a TV show. Chloe wanted attention and she got it, but not the kind she'd planned. I opened a new folder on my desktop. Evidence. Into it I dragged *TS of bank transfers, texts, receipts, comments. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. Boundaries aren't suggestions. They're contracts you make with yourself. That night I sat in the quiet of my living room. The glow of the computer casting sharp shadows on the walls. For once, the silence wasn't oppressive. It was protection. I wrote a line in my journal before bed. Yesterday they tried to erase me. Today I erased their access. The lock is turned. The line is drawn. And when I closed my eyes, sleep came easily. The peace didn't last. It never does when boundaries are set against people who believe they are owed. 3 days after the wedding, I was washing dishes in the quiet kitchen. The sound of running water soothing against the hum of cicadas outside. When I heard the unmistakable rattle of a key in the front door, I froze. The lock clicked once, twice, then stopped. I smiled faintly, drying my hands on a towel. I had changed the locks. They didn't know. From the porch, Chloe's voice rose, high and indignant. Mom, open the door. We're family. Paula's lower, sharper tone followed. This is ridiculous. She can't shut us out. I walked to the door but didn't open it. My voice carried easily through the wood. Family doesn't stage public takedowns. Family doesn't cut their mother from a wedding list. Don't be dramatic, Chloe *T back. It was one day. You ruined everything with your little scene. One day, I repeated quietly. After a year of scenes you thought I would never acknowledge. They shouted again, but I turned and walked away, letting their voices muffled against the door fade into silence. Eventually, their footsteps retreated. But it wasn't over. The next week they returned. This time they didn't come alone. A woman with a tidy bun and a clipboard stood between them. We've brought a family counselor, Paula announced when I opened the storm door but not the main lock. We want to resolve this privately before things escalate. The counselor smiled too brightly, her tone syrupy. Mrs. Reed, sometimes family disagreements can spiral. I'm here to help everyone find peace. I raised an eyebrow. Peace is found in respect. Respect begins with paying debts. Chloe scoffed. Oh my God, Mom, you sound insane. You've obsessed over a few little checks like it's the end of the world. Behind her words was the tone I knew too well. Mockery we *P*** to make me doubt myself. The same tone she'd used as a teenager when she wanted to cut curfew short. The same tone she'd wielded whenever I hesitated to give her what she wanted. I stepped back, the chain lock still fastened. If you want peace, come to Mr. Carter's office. We'll review every transaction together. Their counselor's smile faltered. Maybe we can. Not here, I interrupted. My home is not your courtroom. I closed the door. 2 days later, we met at Mr. Carter's office. I sat beside him at the polished oak table. Chloe and Paula across from us, their expressions arranged into masks of practiced injury. Mr. Carter laid out the documentation. Transfers, receipts, text messages, the spreadsheet. His voice was calm, professional. In 12 months, Mrs. Reed covered nearly $10,000 in expenses on your behalf. Repayment to date 0. Chloe stared at the papers, then muttered, We just wanted a beautiful day. Beauty, Carter replied evenly, is not paid for with blackmail. Paula bristled, pulling a crisp business card from her purse. She slid it across the table toward me. This is a lawyer. We're prepared to file for guardianship. If you continue this behavior, we'll have no choice. I lifted the card, studied it, then placed it back between us. Go ahead. But when you do, we'll also discuss the credit cards under Chloe's name that you, Paula, helped her open. The ones already flagged for suspicious charges. For the first time, silence. Paula's lips pressed into a thin line. Chloe looked down at her hands. Mr. Carter leaned back, folding his arms. If this escalates to court, discovery will bring everything into the open. Are you sure you want that? They gathered their things quickly, slamming the office door on their way out. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Don't push. Document. Breathe." Their anger is proof the boundary holds. My job is not to soften. My job is to stay clear. The house was quiet again when I returned. The locks were steady. My phone, still buzzing with accusations, lay face down on the counter. I let it ring, then ring again, then fall silent. And in that silence, I felt something stronger than peace. I felt control. It took less than 24 hours for the video to escape the loft and spread like fire. You don't belong here. Chloe's voice, sharp and cold, looped endlessly across timelines. Paired with the image of me, frozen halfway up the staircase in my blue dress, clutching that bouquet like a shield. Someone overlaid captions. Someone else slowed the footage to catch the exact second Tyler's hand slipped from hers. By the second morning, it had 500,000 views. Some comments were cruel. Why would a mother ruin her own daughter's wedding? Others were worse, coded in false sympathy. Sad, but she should have just stayed quiet. But many were different. Good for her. Enough is enough. My son used me like an ATM too. I recognize this. They drain you, then discard you. The hashtags multiplied. Hashtag toxic bride. Hashtag not on the list. Hashtag boundaries are love. Chloe doubled down. She posted filtered selfies in her gown, captions about breaking cycles of toxicity, painting me as the jealous villain. Her words dripped with entitlement. I won't let anyone steal my joy, not even family. But her captions filled with comments she couldn't control. The florist, you still owe me for half the flowers. The DJ, never paid my deposit. Kayla, relentless. Check your DMs, I still need repayment. The narrative slipped from Chloe's hands like sand. She wanted sympathy. She got scrutiny. And I, the woman erased from the seating chart, found my voice amplified. The city library invited me to speak at a community event. Finances and boundaries. Lessons from experience. I almost said no. But then I thought of all the people watching that video, seeing only humiliation. I wanted them to know humiliation could turn into something else. That night, I stood at a podium in the library's meeting hall, under fluorescent lights instead of chandeliers. No flowers, no champagne, just rows of plastic chairs filled with strangers. I told my story. Not theatrically, not to shock, just the truth laid bare. How quickly, I said. Love can be nized into a credit line. How easily generosity can turn into expectation. How silence kept long enough becomes consent. Nods. Murmurs of recognition. A woman in the second row wept quietly. A man in the back raised his hand and said, "My stepdaughter did this to me. Thank you for saying it out loud." When I finished, they clapped. Not the perfunctory applause of politeness, but the steady, sustained rhythm of people who understood. That night I redirected the torn check, the one I'd slipped into my purse at the wedding. I donated the $2,000 to a nonprofit helping people trapped in financial abuse. It felt like sealing a wound, turning something corrupted into something clean. But the story didn't stay clean. 3 days later, an email arrived. The subject line, "Sorry." It was from Tyler. The body was short. "I know this isn't enough, but I need to talk. Off the record." Attached was a simple request to meet at a cafe downtown. I stared at the screen for a long time. Tyler, the boy who had stood by while Chloe erased me, the man who had told me not to cause a scene, now reaching out. I went. The cafe was quiet, the kind of place where students studied and old men nursed black coffee. Tyler sat in the corner, looking smaller than he had at the loft. His tie was gone, his hair messy, his hands clasped around a mug he hadn't touched. When he saw me, he stood. "Mrs. Reed," he said softly. I sat across from him. "Why am I here?" He swallowed hard. "Because Chloe says you ruined her dream. But I can't stop thinking about what I saw. The numbers. Kayla. The messages." His voice trailed off. He looked ashamed. I didn't let him finish. "Tyler, dreams don't collapse because of truth. They collapse because they were built on lies." He nodded, his shoulders sagging. For the first time, maybe, he looked like a man beginning to see clearly. When the bill came, he reached for it. Paid without hesitation. Small, yes, but a step. As I walked back into the night, I realized something bitter and liberating. Sometimes truth doesn't repair relationships. Sometimes it just clarifies them. Chloe and I were no longer mother and daughter in the way the world assumed. But I was something else now, free. And freedom, unlike weddings, requires no witnesses. It came in a thick white envelope stamped with the county seal. Notice of guardianship petition. Filed by Paula Hale. Co-signed by Chloe Reed. Their claim was simple, brutal. That I was no longer fit to manage my finances. That I was confused, irrational, vulnerable. That my recent outbursts, meaning the truth I spoke at the wedding, proved declining mental capacity. I sat at my kitchen table, fingers trembling over the paper. My daughter wanted to erase me not just from her wedding, but from my own life. She wanted me legally silenced, financially gutted, reduced to a ward of the court. Mr. Carter, my attorney, was calm when I brought him the documents. "This is ugly," he admitted. "But it's not unusual. Financial guardianship has become a P*N in family disputes. Don't worry, Nora, we'll fight." The trial was set for the following month. In the weeks before, I underwent every test Mr. Carter suggested. Blood work, cognitive exams, psychological evaluations. Each one returned clean. I was healthier than most women a decade younger. Dr. Lang, the psychologist, smiled after my session. "If anything," she said, "you're sharper than average. Your daughter's petition won't hold. Still, fear not at me. Because courtrooms aren't about truth alone. They're about theater." And Chloe had always loved a stage. The day arrived gray and humid, the courthouse steps slick with drizzle. I wore a black suit, pressed carefully, my pearl earrings small but steady against my neck. As I entered, whispers rippled. The story had spread, and strangers craned their necks to glimpse the woman from the viral wedding video. Inside, the courtroom was cold, the walls lined with wood panels scarred by years of disputes. Judge Miller presided, a tall man with silver hair and a reputation for fairness. His eyes were piercing, his gavel sharp. Chloe sat at the petitioner's table with Paula beside her. Both wore dark dresses, faces solemn as if in mourning. Their attorney, a well-fed man with a theatrical voice, shuffled his papers with relish. I sat opposite with Mr. Carter. My folder of receipts and transfers rested in front of me like a shield. The bailiff called order. The petitioner's lawyer rose. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth as oil, "we are here today because Mrs. Nora Reed has demonstrated troubling behaviors consistent with financial incompetence. She has severed ties with her only daughter, refused reasonable family mediation, and displayed paranoia through unnecessary expenditures such as multiple lock changes and security systems. We believe she is being manipulated by outside parties who are taking advantage of her vulnerability." His words painted me as a fragile old woman, a puppet jerked by invisible strings. I sat still, hands folded, refusing to flinch. Then they called their witnesses. First was Chloe. She walked to the stand, head bowed, her veil of martyrdom perfectly arranged. When she raised her eyes to the jury box, tears shimmered on her lashes. "My mother has always been difficult," she said softly. "But recently she's changed. She's angry all the time. She lashes out. At my wedding, she humiliated me in front of everyone. She says she gave me money, but she throws it in my face like a P*N. I don't want her to suffer. I just want her safe." Her voice cracked. Theatrical. Practiced. Mr. Carter leaned close and whispered, "Let her talk. The more she performs, the less credible she looks." Paula testified next. Her words were colder. "Nora is unstable. She cancels checks, accuses everyone of betrayal, isolates herself. This is elder decline, plain and simple. We're not here out of malice. We're here to protect her." Her tone dripped with self-righteous pity, the kind only manipulators can summon. Then came Mr. Davis, my neighbor, who claimed I had become paranoid. She installed cameras everywhere. She yells at her family in the street. She doesn't trust anyone. I bit my tongue until it bled. Finally, they presented Dr. Lehman, a psychiatrist they had paid to evaluate me from afar. He testified that my refusal to undergo additional tests was consistent with cognitive decline and lack of insight. By the time they finished, the courtroom buzzed with unease. Then it was our turn. Mr. Carter rose. "Your Honor, the petitioners have offered hearsay, dramatics, and purchased opinions. We will present facts." First, Mr. Green, my pharmacist. He explained how Chloe had tricked him into signing a vague statement about my medications. "Mrs. Reed is perfectly healthy," he said firmly. "She buys vitamins and aspirin. Nothing more." Next came Dr. Lang, my psychologist. She read her evaluation into the record. "Nora Reed demonstrates full cognitive competence. Her memory, reasoning, and judgment are not just intact, they are exceptional for her age." Then came Kayla. She testified, voice steady, about the credit card fraud, the unpaid hotel rooms, the pattern of exploitation. Her testimony cut through Chloe's theatrics like a knife. Finally, I was called. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked to the stand. My hand shook only slightly as I swore the oath. "Mrs. Reed," Carter asked gently, "why did you stop financially supporting your daughter?" I looked at Chloe. Her face was tight, pale. Because I realized she wasn't asking for help. She was demanding tribute. My love was not welcome unless it came attached to a check. I gave her nearly $10,000 in a year. What I got in return was exclusion, silence, mockery. At her wedding, she told me I didn't belong. She was right. I don't belong in a life where I'm only valued for my money. Murmurs spread through the gallery. The petitioner's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to paint me as bitter and irrational. "Mrs. Reed, isn't it true you caused a scene at your daughter's wedding?" I met his eyes. I spoke the truth. If truth is a scene, then so be it. He pressed harder. "Isn't it true you've alienated your only child?" I held my ground. Alienation happens when love is traded for currency. I stopped paying. "That is all." The lawyer sputtered. The judge raised a hand. "Enough." After closing arguments, Judge Miller disappeared into chambers. The wait was excruciating. My palms were damp, my heart beat loud in my ears. Chloe sat stiffly, Paula whispering furiously in her ear. When the judge returned, the room fell silent. "I have reviewed the petition," he began. His voice was steady, deliberate. "I find no evidence that Mrs. Nora Reed is incompetent. On the contrary, the evidence shows she is in full possession of her faculties. This court denies the request for guardianship." Gasps. Relief surged through me so strong I almost wept. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, the court notes troubling evidence of financial exploitation by the petitioners. While no charges are before me today, I strongly advise Mrs. Reed to pursue protection of her assets and to maintain clear separation. The gavel struck. Final. Chloe's face crumpled. Paula looked as though she'd swallowed glass. They left quickly, whispers following them like shadows. Tyler lingered near the doorway. For a moment he looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded, faintly, almost respectfully, before turning away. I walked out of the courthouse into the drizzle. The air was cool, cleansing. My suit was damp, my hair clung to my face, but I felt lighter than I had in years. The legal war was over. I had won. Not just the case. Not just my independence. I had won myself back. The courthouse gavel still echoed in my chest long after I left. Not the sound of victory. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was something stranger, harder to name. Relief, yes. Grief, too. And underneath it all, the faintest pulse of something I hadn't known in years, possibility. In the weeks that followed, I dismantled my old life piece by piece. I sold my suburban house. The one where Chloe's toys once littered the yard. Where birthday candles had been blown out. Where her father and I had sat on the porch dreaming of her future. I thought letting go would feel like ripping skin from bone. Instead, It felt like setting down a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying. The realtor asked if I was sure. "It's a family home," she said, her voice heavy with unspoken pity. "It was," I answered simply. "Now it's just walls." I packed carefully. Not everything came with me. Chloe's room still holding the relics of childhood. Ribbons, trophies, dolls, and faded dresses. I left untouched. Let the next owner paint over it. Some ghosts aren't worth exorcising. I rented a bright apartment near the park. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, the air smelled of fresh paint, and the silence was mine alone. The first night I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, eating takeout noodles, and realized I wasn't waiting for anyone. No one to call for money. No one to rattle the locks. Just me, steady in the quiet. I enrolled in art classes at the community center. Charcoal under my fingernails, paint smudged across my wrist. Messes that were mine alone. For the first time in decades, I drew without glancing at a clock, without worrying about an incoming text begging for funds. Lines curved into faces, colors spread into skies. Freedom takes form in small strokes. Twice a week, I volunteered at a women's center downtown. I told pieces of my story. Not the viral version, not the tabloid whispers, but the raw truth. How generosity can be twisted. How family can sharpen into a we*P*N. The women nodded. Some cried. One whispered, "You just said my life out loud." I opened a new savings account labeled Joy Only. Into it went small deposits, money for a trip, for classes, for books. No cosigners. No silent siphoning. Each transfer felt like reclaiming territory that had been occupied for too long. Chloe didn't call. She didn't text. I watched her life unfold from a distance. Filtered posts, forced smiles, captions about resilience. Our only contact was indirect. The occasional message forwarded by strangers. A headline about the viral wedding fiasco recycled months later by some blog desperate for clicks. Maybe one day she will reach out. Maybe she'll text not "you ruined everything" but "I understand." That will be her choice. Mine is this: to live without blackmail. To breathe without fear of the next ask. On Sundays I walked in the park. Families picnicked, children screamed, couples strolled hand in hand. I watched them, not with envy, but with a kind of detached clarity. Bonds can be real, but they can also be illusions, fragile as glass. Some evenings I sat by my apartment window sipping tea, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. I thought of Chloe, of the girl she once was, clutching my hand at the first day of kindergarten, eyes wide with fear. I thought of the woman she became, standing at the loft staircase, eyes cold as she said, "You don't belong here." She was right. I don't belong in her world. Not anymore. And that truth, as brutal as it is, carries its own freedom. If you ever stand at the doorway of someone's perfect ceremony and hear those words, "You don't belong," remember. Belonging is not granted by blood or rings or hashtags. Belonging is chosen, earned, reciprocated. Truth wears no lace. Boundaries aren't accessories. They either exist or they don't. My story doesn't end with reconciliation. It ends with severance. With the scar closed, the wound cauterized, the silence absolute. I am Nora Reed. Mother, widow, survivor. I spent years buying love, only to learn love cannot be bought. Now I spend my days buying nothing but my own time. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? Where did you first hear my story? Because stories like mine aren't rare. They're everywhere, whispered in kitchens, confessed in courtrooms, played out behind locked doors. I only gave mine a microphone. And may every story like mine end with someone, anyone, finally choosing themselves.